Thanks for coming. My name is Jeremy Freiberger. For those of you that don't know me, I run an organization called Cobalt Connects. We're a nonprofit art service organization based here in Hamilton, and we do all sorts of different kinds of work. But the core thing that drives all of our work is part of our mission statement that our job is to spur projects or ideas or research that advance the creative sector. And that's how we got involved in this facility, the LIVELab, which I imagine for most of you it's your first time being here. And we're really excited that you're here. We've been planning this for a little while, and our job at the LIVELab is to help them collaborate. So we met the LIVELab about a year and a half ago when we were doing a research project called Expressing Vibrancy, where we were looking at the role of culture in neighborhoods. And ended up using the LIVELab to help understand the physiological response people had to different kinds of things and assets in neighborhoods. And from that project, we just decided we liked working together. And the LIVELab really wanted to find a way to better connect with the creative community that they know is present here in Hamilton, which is why all of you have been invited, but also a network much beyond that. That they're doing all sorts of amazing kinds of research, but they've kind of been doing it in a rabbit hole for a number of years. And now that they have this beautiful gem of a facility, they want to sort of blow the doors open and say, we want to collaborate with all of you, doing all sorts of interesting and different kinds of things. So tonight's about getting you up to speed on what they can and can't do in this space. And where we can plug you into that process, whether it's ideas that you've had or ideas that they have where they need you to be a part of it. So again, it's about spurring collaboration, which is most of the work that we get to do, which is kind of fun stuff. And this lab is the only lab of its kind in the world. And it's in Hamilton. I always find those kind of moments very interesting where Hamilton, has a strange reputation of itself. And every now and then we get handed a gem of a tool. And we as a community have to figure out how to leverage that tool to really push our creative sector in a unique way before we use it to push other creative sectors. Though there are some Toronto people here, that's great. Don't mean to disparage you, you're more than welcome. But we're trying to start here with the network that we definitely already know, and so tonight's about building some of those partnerships. Cobalt's really excited in this facility in particular because it's so different than any other facility we've been a part of. We've been a part of all sorts of different kinds of studios for artists. But never have we been involved in a space that has this immense amount of technology and decades of dedication to studying music and studying the interaction between artists. We've obviously never been a part of something like this before, so we're just thrilled to be a part of this and bringing the artist network that we know into this facility and seeing where you want to play a role. We're already starting a handful of things with the LIVELab, so we're looking at some partnerships all over the province. So Friday, we're going on a little road trip to a place called the LIVELab in Waterloo to talk to some folks there about some really cool interactive work they're doing. We're working on a concert series called Series 10dB, and that name will make some more sense later, but it's a series of 6 concerts that we're starting in October, the first Thursday of the month, where we're going to have artists who are brought in to specifically create concerts for this environment, and each of them will be completely unique because they're going to be using the systems in this space that you're going to learn about differently each time they come in. So I'm happy that some of them are here. Christina Seeley's here as part of that series. So what we're exploring tonight is everything from research to creating new works to using this as an event space, a recording space, a whole host of different things. And our job tonight is to get you excited about this. So we've brought in a fantastic artist, Andy Shaw, and I'm really thrilled that Andy took on the challenge of this night. A bit of pressure because you're all here. One of my first experiences with Annie was, I think, in a small storefront studio on James Street where she was recording things, looping things on the floor. She was kind of just sitting on the floor. I was kind of wondering what the heck this person was doing. And then by the time she was done, there was magic. Like she had taken all of these little nuggets and strung them together into something totally beautiful. So I'm really curious to see what she does in this environment. So Andy's taken on that challenge of giving you a bit of a show tonight to get you sort of into what this space is capable of doing. You'll hear from some of the LIVELab staff throughout the night, and they're specialists in each of their own fields, so they'll get you much deeper into than what I can tell you about the technology here. And then at the end of the night, there's food and drink outside in the lobby. You can take tours of the other spaces here, so there's a motion capture lab and a dance studio and some other small spaces. And then we've got some sort of brainstorming, idea-generating stations where we're hoping that you will share with us some of your knowledge. What are the kind of artists that you think will really thrive in a space like this? What maybe little ideas do you have that might spark and that we can help you accomplish? Part of our job as Cobalt is to not just help the LIVELab, but help those that want to work with the LIVELab. So whether that's grant writing or finding sponsors and donors, things of those sort to make cool new projects happen. So thank you for being here tonight. And I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Loyal Trainer. This is her baby. So I invite Dr. Loyal Trainer to come up and tell us more about the genesis of this lab and what you're working on.
Thanks, Jeremy, and a really warm welcome to everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah, good. I'm just thrilled that you're all here. As Jeremy said, this is a unique space. It's unique in the world. There is no other one that has everything that we have here. And I hope that you see throughout the evening that this lab really will enable creative use of technology in musical performances and in recording. And so we really want to show you a bit of what the lab can do tonight. There are a number of equipment systems here, and Dan Bosniak will talk about some of them later. But one of the most important ones is our Meyer active acoustic system. So the basic acoustic in here is very quiet and very dead, but we can actually mimic anything from a cathedral to Carnegie Hall to a subway station to outdoors. And you can just start to think about how you could use this facility in some of the creative stuff that you're involved in. Just a little background. A group of us started, it's almost 10 years ago that we had the idea of building this. And so it's taken a long time to get the money together, to get this construction together, and so on. It was funded by the Canada Foundation for Innovation, the Ontario government, and also we have some funding through McMaster. Operation is, of course, a different ballgame, and we have industry partnerships that are helping to fund the lab, as well as our scientists here apply for research grants, and that keeps us going as well. So for those of you who are familiar with the McMaster campus, and maybe you haven't been here for a little while, this building where you are right now actually used to be a flat roof. That's what it used to look like. It was this ugly flat roof at the front of the psychology building. And we started construction in January 2012. So gradually we built on top of this roof. It wasn't finished until the summer of 2014, so it was quite a long process. This is what it looks like now. It was a bit of an engineering feat. The acoustic properties in here require that we have a lot of concrete, which is very heavy. And so because we're building on the second floor, it's actually cantilevered. So there was some interesting construction that went on. You might have noticed there are very large ducts in the ceilings that we left open. That's because for the acoustics, we have to have very slow airflow so that we control the noise of the air systems. So this is where we are today. I think it's a really cool performance venue that offers a lot of potential for creative new ways of making music and different performances. But in addition to that, it's a research facility, and we actually got the money to build this because we wanted to do research. As Jeremy said, a number of us here at McMaster have been doing research related to neuroscience and music and how music's processed in your brain and so on. We've been doing this for a long time. But this facility allows us to do things that we weren't able to do before. So for example, we're very interested in not only how an individual musician does the amazing feat of producing their music, but also if you're playing with other musicians, how do your brains synchronize so that you can play with them, so you can be in the zone with them, so that you can be on time with them, so you can follow whatever they're doing musically. So we use, for example, EEG measures of brain waves to look at how that gets accomplished in the brain. We use motion capture systems to look at how people's movements coordinate when they're playing together. And in addition, we measure emotional and cognitive responses from audience members. And we can measure a number of audience members at the same time. So if we measure your heart rate or little sweating responses in your skin, we can actually monitor how you're emotionally responding to whatever's happening on the stage. So we're really interested in the science behind how music is performed and how audiences and performers interact. So we have ongoing studies in lots of different areas. For example, we're working with a string quartet, the Afiara String Quartet, which is based in Toronto, has won many awards. And we're looking at how they play together and how the way they move affects audiences and so on. We're doing studies of performance anxiety, which, as you probably know, is rampant in your profession, but often not talked about very much. So we're monitoring physiologically what happens when people experience this and what kinds of treatment are effective in ameliorating it. We're working with hearing aid companies, designing hearing aids that work well for music, that work well in noisy environments, that we can test with our acoustic systems in here. We're working on a number of health-related projects. Matt Woolhouse, for example, is working with Parkinson's patients, using music and movement to help them overcome some of the debilitating aspects of their disease. So Dan is going to describe a bit later in more detail some of these equipment systems, and after we're done here you can ask me or Dan or other of our staff if you want more details on any of this. So as I said, we just opened last fall. We're really excited. Every time someone comes into the lab, we feel like they have a new idea for how they want to use the space. So what I'm going to do next is we'll just show you a very short video, 3-minute video, of a few clips from our grand opening that we had last fall. And that will just give you a few ideas about how you might go about using the space. So welcome and enjoy the video.
This is the first time I've ever experienced anything like this in my entire career of 10 plus years. The complexity of the kinds of sounds they can achieve is enormous.
Hello everybody. Welcome to LIVELab. It's great to see you.
Well, it's actually about 8 years in the planning from when we initially had this idea to going through the building of the facility to now when we're actually ready to open. We have amazing musicians. We're going to demo the virtual acoustics and all around have a fun time.
The facility is absolutely unique in the world. First off, for its sound quality, which is really quite excellent, as well as this active acoustic system that lets us create any acoustic environment that we want. We have a number of systems that let us record responses from both musicians and audience members. Their heart rate, respiration, brain waves, so that we can figure out what's going on inside of their head while a performance is going on.
When they adjust the acoustics of with their computers, you can hear the effects that it has on the music itself, and it's an extremely powerful experience. We have a long history here of very, very innovative, groundbreaking research in sometimes unexpected areas. And this is another classic example of that.
The thing that blows me away is just the connection between things like music and performance and science and brainwaves. Every time we talk to someone about the LIVELab, we hear, well, I can use it for that or this. It seems to be never-ending possibilities. So I think this is just the beginning, lots of possibilities in all sorts of different fields. So it's really exciting.
Well, I'm Dan Bosniak. I'm the technical director of the LIVELab. And what I'm going to do is talk in a little bit more detail about some of the systems that Laurel mentioned, so to give you some of the flavor of some of the things that we can do in here. As she mentioned, we've been studying musicians. I've been studying musicians and the differences between musicians and non-musicians for something like 15 years. You know, we put a musician in a little booth and we play piano and violin sounds and look at how their brains respond to these sounds. But when we created this lab, we now have the opportunity to look at music in action. In other words, you know, musicians producing music and audiences actually experiencing music, and what's special about that. And one of the systems that we have for doing that is buried underneath the floor. There's a whole bunch of equipment to measure physiological responses from audience members. So roll the EEG reel For both on the stage, musicians on the stage, and audience members, we can hook up their heads to these caps that measure brain waves. So this is Steven Satarski, who's the concertmaster from the Hamilton Philharmonic, and they're wiring him up to record his brain waves while he performs, and at the same time we actually had an audience member wired up. Now this is just a demo of two people being measured at the same time, but we can actually measure up to 32 audience members simultaneously. So 32 people in the audience, we can be measuring their brain waves, we can be measuring their heart rate, we can be measuring how quickly they're breathing, and this information gives us an idea of, for example, how excited they are, how aroused are they by the musical performance, so we can study that sort of thing as the performance is going on. And as Laurel also suggested, we can look at things like what happens when a quartet is improvising and they're in the groove, and how do their brain waves show, what differences do they show when people are performing in that fashion compared to maybe some amateurs who don't know what they're doing, for example. So we can study things like that using the EEG technology that's built into the system, and that's all sitting under the floor, and people would come into the lab and go into the other room and get wired up with these caps, and they come into the lab and get connected up, and then we can see what's going on during the performance. This information would then be processed offline afterwards. But one of the other things we can do with that information is process it in real time. So for those of you who are performance artists who want to make something a little bit different, we could, for example, look at elements of people's brain waves in real time during a performance and then feed that back into the performance somehow. So for example, the lights or the sound or something to that effect could be controlled by what's going on with people's brain waves during the actual performance in real time. So that's the EEG system. Now that system collects what we would call involuntary information, right? You can't really, to any great extent, control what your brain waves are doing. So people tell us the truth when we measure their brain waves, but we also can measure things from them voluntarily through the use of tablets. So everyone in the audience has we have 100 Android tablets that we give out to people in the audience, and anytime during a performance or whatever is going on, we can push out a question, a multiple choice question that they could answer on the tablet, and we could collect that information all in real time. And we can also do this sort of slider thing. So during this concert, we were asking them how energetic versus how calm they felt this particular part of the performance was, and then in real time everybody's moving their slider up and down, and the composite response of the audience is reflected on the screen there, so sort of showing. And Lila was quite interested to see whether or not how the changing to the minor keys was changing the, how people felt about whether it was energetic or calm, things like that. So that kind of thing can be used, again, in either offline afterwards to analyze something. So, you could have 2 or 3 versions of a commercial presentation and get people's reactions. You could have a political speech. You could have 2 or 3 versions of a song and see how people feel about the ending. You could analyze these things offline with questionnaires, or you can do real-time stuff where people's feedback is actually controlling something. And we're going to actually, our first concert in the concert series is actually going to feature something where the composition is actually going to be controlled by the audience to some extent. So the musicians are going to be performing at the same time the audience is going to be using their tablets to vote on what happens next in the song. And then the song is going to change depending on what people want. So, we think that one of the important aspects of why audiences like live music is because they have this sense of involvement. When you come out to see a performance, you're part of the performance. And so we want to enhance that even further by giving the audience tools to actually be part of the performance. And that's one of our goals, and that's one of our sort of artistic goals, if you will, but also a scientific goal, to see whether or not that level of interactivity actually makes them enjoy the concert experience even more. And then another technology we have is of course, motion capture. There's a room dedicated to motion capture out there, the dance studio, but also in here we have motion capture cameras everywhere. And so on the stage, this is two people in a string quartet who have motion capture markers on them. Here's a dancer on the stage. So we can put these markers on you and then record what's going on and do the 3D rendition, and you could map that onto an avatar if you were creating a video game, or you could make measurements about we did a study where we were measuring synchronization in a string quartet and who was leading and who was following when we messed around with the leader-follower relationship. So we made the first violin the leader, then we made the second violin the leader, and then we measure with the motion capture to see if there's subtle changes in how they are performing with their bows. So we can do things like that, studies, but again, like all technology in here, it could be also used interactively. So I could create an object, marker it with the motion capture system, and then move it around the room, and the location of the object could control a sound that's going on continuously in the room, and where the tone of the sound could be controlled by the location of the object, so that in that sense the audience could participate in the performance by moving the object around, for example, something like that. Or I had this other idea where you could have a flute player, and depending on how they orient themselves, the 3D location of the flute could control the acoustics of the room. So they could actually perform into the room and perform the room at the same time. As you'll see in this last segment, which is the thing that you're probably most interested in, which is the acoustics, you'll see that the acoustics in the room are quite interesting and variable. So we got all sorts of tricks that we can play with them. And in order to show you that, we're actually going to give you first off a musical demonstration, and then I'll come back at the end of that and give you some technical details. So first we're going to invite Annie Shaw, who Jeremy also already talked about a little bit. She's a Hamilton performer. She's a pianist, a vocalist. She first studied music at Mohawk, and then moved to McGill, got a degree in music from McGill, and she does sort of experimental loop-based music. It's really quite cool, and she came in here and we persuaded her to sort of deconstruct some of her pieces that she had already created and redo them for this sort of multi-channel sound environment that we have here with variable acoustics. So she was kind enough to revise some of the things that she's done to make it suit the room and maybe give you guys a cool look at a really experimental version of performance that's tailored for this room. So bring Annie Shaw in and we'll hear her perform. And then I'll come back afterwards. Annie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the lovely introduction. I'm just going to start with this. It was really fun to come in here and make all these toys. If I get carried away, I'm sorry. It's sort of a dark song to start with. But this one's even worse. And it's also a sing-along song. If any of you feel moved, sing along. Just in case. Crushing a little bird in my hand. It's touching a little bird. Time in my cow saw me crying on the cave, and after a while he overheard said, "Oh, stop it, Annie. Please come over here and we'll do it together." Saw me crying on the
At least come over
cave.
here and we'll do it together.
Brad said, "That's the closest to a hug I've ever seen you give in space." Did you hear what we were talking about? No. When Guy was 9, said he saw his mother beat his father to death. Spent most of his life on a park bench, and you think he lied? Do 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 you think he lied? I can't believe that I'm not on a train careening to that beauty place. I can't believe that I'm not on 3 trains. I can't believe that I'm not on a train careening to that beauty place. I can't believe that I am not on 3 trains. That was kind of weird. Does there happen to be some members of Earth, Wind, and Choir in the audience here? That's just cool, yeah. Well, maybe it's just the voices in my head, so let's just do a trick. I know the voices in my head love singing in the key of F sharp major. One morning, Death comes a creeping in the room. Well, brothers, soon one morning, Death comes a creeping in the room. Soon one morning, Death comes a creeping in the room, crying, oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Well, you can call on your mother. Your mama can't do you no good. Call on your mother. Your mama can't do you no good. Call on your mother. Your mama can't do you no good. Crying, oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Well, hush, hush. Somebody's calling my name. Hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush. Somebody's calling my name, crying, oh my Lord, oh my Lord, what
Okay, Earth, Wind, and Choir is here. Can we give them a round of applause? Sorry for being so sneaky. Okay. I'm gonna do another song. This room is full of ghosts. Check it out.
Things are all ball and just sappy runs of dreams. Nighthawks grilling their enemies slowly for screams. I died Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to do another piece. Thank you all for listening. And thanks to everyone here at the LIVELab so much for all their help. This was really fun. And Jeremy for putting this on. And Earth, Wind, and Choir. And all y'all. This is another one with the piano. So we're gonna sing along.
Thank you.
Well, that was Annie Shaw. Well, that was really great. I don't know if I should really say anything now. I feel like we should just go out and think about what we just heard. But anyway, I promised to tell you a little bit more about the acoustics and how it works. You heard some demonstration of it, but I'll just explain a little bit about it. So first of all, if everybody just, is absolutely silent, which is impossible, you can put up the first slide. You'll hear that this room is extremely quiet. That's because of as Laurel mentioned, the way we constructed it. So there's actually a giant concrete shell. The floor is a concrete slab that's 5 inches thick, and it's sitting on rubber pads all distributed throughout the space. So that's underneath of this fake flooring that we have. There's a concrete slab and there's a concrete ceiling, and then inside of that there's a completely separate room built. And every penetration into and outside of the room is specially controlled with flexible joints and caulking and fiberglass and so on. And that is to give us a background noise level that's very, very low. Give me the next one. Typically, you get in a good recording studio, you usually get a noise criterion level in the 10 to 15 region. A concert hall might have something like 20. This room with the lights off, when Meyer came to try and evaluate how quiet the room was, they didn't actually have any microphones that had low enough noise floor to measure how low the background noise was, especially in the upper regions. So then we went out and bought some more expensive microphones, and we're actually in around the 5, in between NC5 and NC10. So that means that essentially above around a kilohertz, the background noise in the room is completely inaudible to the human ear. And then, of course, there's the inevitable low frequency stuff, but that you get from rumble that carries through the walls. It's very difficult to get rid of. But in any case, this is a very, very quiet room. So the room starts out being very, very quiet, but it also starts out being completely non-reverberant. Give me the next one. If you turn all the reverberation systems off, you can hear the room is actually essentially completely dead. There's very little reverberation. You get a little bit of flutter from the screen to the back window sometimes, and that's the kind of reverberation that you want for speech. So you guys can understand me very well. I probably don't need to have my microphone turned on. You get really good clarity. This is the sort of thing that you want for theater or whatever. But of course, it really sucks if you're planning on doing an opera or an organ recital or a symphony orchestra. And we can actually then, because we start with essentially a blank slate, no background noise, no reverberation, we can add reverberation. We can make the room more and more reverberant. So we can add reverberation into the room to create whatever level of reverberation we want, up to an absolutely ridiculous amount. And you heard during the, so we can get 8 seconds of reverberation time out of this room if we want, before it starts to feed back. Now you heard that during that one choir performance where they started out and the room was completely dead, and Runnell faded the reverb up during the performance, so it started out in a completely dead environment, and then by about halfway through the song it was starting to get a little liver. And so we can actually change it in real time. We can change the environment in real time. So the commercial application here, of course, is to be able to produce multi-purpose rooms, so that you can have a room that can act as a classroom, but could also act as a place where a symphony orchestra could play. And that really is huge. It's a huge money-saving thing to be able to do that. I mean, to do it with physical acoustics is extremely expensive. You got to have these panels and curtains and everything that you move around in order to change the acoustics And it obviously doesn't happen instantaneously like we can do in here. And as I said earlier, we could actually have the heartbeat of a member of the audience, the heart rate of the member of the audience could control the reverberation time of the room. All the systems are interconnected, and everything can control everything else. And it's really up to your imagination to determine what it is that you want the systems to do. In addition, of course, to, assuming this thing works, in addition to creating reverberation, we can also create we can insert sounds into the room. So the reverberation is created by a set of 30 microphones and about 75 speakers and subwoofers that are distributed throughout the ceiling and around the walls. But we can also insert sounds into any and all of those speakers as we wish. So we can create an environment like, for example, a restaurant. So we make a multi-channel mix. It sounds like a restaurant environment. We can use this sort of environment for testing something like a hearing aid algorithm, so that we could put a hearing aid on somebody with hearing impairment and test them in a realistic environment to see how well their hearing aid does when there's sort of conflicting inputs. And we're actually in the process of creating realistic stimuli where we have people come in and do a sort of a cocktail party thing, and we record it with all the microphones and then recreate it with the speakers so that we can create controlled multi-channel acoustic environments of different levels of background noise in order to test things like speech intelligibility in certain situations. We can also insert sounds in 3 dimensions, so we can make things move around. So the fly sounds quite realistic. He'll come up here eventually. It's really quite good because there's only like a mono. I believe is it a mono track, Ronald? It's just a mono fly track, and then there's this sort of space map software, and we can with the mouse we can plot out where we want the fly to be, and then it will just sort of fly around. But you could even do that with an OS control thing, and you could do an XY thing, or with a tablet move the sound around through the space, or you could have the motion capture system track an object and move the sound around to track where the object is in space as well. Let me do that, because all of these kind of systems you have to do the helicopter. If the helicopter's out of fuel or something. There we go. The helicopter has to do. And of course, the acoustics is handled mostly by these smaller speakers, and there's subwoofers up in the ceiling as well. But we also have the sort of main PAs. This is the whole system is Meyer. I don't know if some of you are familiar probably with Meyer equipment. It's all top end stuff that they use in the big stadium shows and everything. Meyer is one of probably the last, I suppose, North American producers of audio equipment. They actually apparently have a forest in British Columbia that they own, and they chop the trees down from that forest and create the pulp to make the speaker cones for their own speakers. So it's all kept in. Although I think their electronics probably comes from China these days. But I will play the PA demo because you guys are all music people, just so you get an idea of the quality of the system. It's not really very loud. It sounds louder than it is. got two 500-watt subs, one on each side, and then the two PAs for that. So that's basically the acoustic system. I can answer questions about it afterwards when we go out and do our talking, but I guess Jeremy wants to come up and say some final words and before we go to where the booze and stuff is. Here, I'll hand you the microphone.
Well, there's something a little different for all of you. I hope you really enjoyed that. I really thrilled that Annie said she would do this game. Thank you again for coming. And now is where you get to do some work. You've had some fun watching and enjoying. So outside in the lobby, we have a handful of things. One, we have a bar, and you have a bar ticket, so you can get a free drink. We also have some food for you to grab, some bites to eat. And what we've set up is two really basic stations where we want to sort of pick your brain. So we've got a bit of a map of the world from the LIVELab perspective, with the LIVELab being in the middle, and sort of a handful of people that we're playing with already. Collaborators we have, whether they're studios or other researchers or musicians we're playing with. We want to know where you fit into that network. So in your package, you've got a couple little blank hexagons, and hopefully you grabbed a marker. If you didn't, there are more of the stations. Those are for you to fill yourself in, or other people you know that you want to add to that network and say, I want to be a part of this, and where do I want to be a part of it, and how do I want to be a part of it? And then another station that's over by the bar. So over at the first one, that's where my staff member Kim is going to be, so she'll be there helping you out and helping you explore that idea. If you go out the back door, you can go to the bar, and Jennifer will be there. We've got just, again, some hexagons on the window, and we want to know artists that jump to mind for you that you think would totally get into this space. Who are the people that would really thrive in playing and experimenting in this environment? And it doesn't matter how big, small, far away, near those artists are, we're willing to reach to wherever they are to invite them to be a part of this project and this facility. So we know that you know that network way better than we ever will. So from the disciplines that you're from, help us think of the people that really should be a part of this space. And then just talk, collaborate, chat with each other. So LIVELab staff will be there. You've already met Laurel and Dan. Folks in the back that need to be mentioned, Susan and Ronald and JJ are people you can't see right now who have been running the lights and some of the audio and sound and whatnot. Dana and Dave are also in the back who have been always in the background making things happen. We've got a handful of other volunteers who are out in the lobby ready to help you answer, ask questions. So tonight from here on out is about starting the collaboration, start sharing ideas. Other things that are in your package. And sorry, the other person I forgot to mention is Colleen. Colleen is the admin person behind all of the LIVELab. She's the one that keeps all of us organized. So Colleen will be out there unless she's in here now. She is. She's hiding over there. Colleen, stand out of the way so everyone gets to actually see you. So in your package is Colleen's card. She's probably the gateway person, the first person you will contact if you decide you want to get involved here. You're probably reaching out to Colleen first. So other things in your package are like spec and tech sheets on all of the crazy stuff that is in this lab, far more than I can ever tell you about. And then we've also included a card called One Big Idea, and that we do Cobalt does a lot of community collaboration stuff, and we ask you to share stuff kind of out in the public realm. And not all of that's, it's not easy for artists to do that all the time. Sometimes you've got an idea, and you kind of want it to be your idea. You don't want to write it on the wall and say, wouldn't it be great if somebody did this, and then the guy next to you does it. So we're fine with that, we understand that. So there's a thing in there that you can fill out that maybe you've got an idea that tonight just said, I want to bring this person here, or I want to bring this idea here. Feel free to fill it in on that card, add your name, email, phone number, whatever contact information you want, and that's a reason for us to call you back and say, I want to talk to you about your one big idea, and how can we help you make it happen here. So again, thank you for coming. Hope you've had a good time. You can go out either door. One takes you to food, one takes you to booze. They both take you to ways to get involved in the LIVELab. Have a fun night, and once again, thank you to Annie and Earth, Wind & Fire for taking on the challenge of the LIVELab tonight. Really thank you for being here. Have a fun night.